generation passed away, Satan went to the next generation and said, these were the true gods of your ancestors. And this is how the people, from being monotheistic, started to worship several gods and take these idols as their creators, as their sustainers, asking them, praying to them, worshiping them in order to get their needs met. So we did not start from polytheism and then eventually find our way to monotheism. We started with monotheism. Adam and Eve were both monotheists. Adam and Eve were both Muslims. They were both following the original message of worshiping one God. And then slowly we diverted from the straight path. We were misguided by Satan, and people, they erected and came up with different theories and philosophies and came up with all these religions which we have on earth today. So Islam grew with more prophets. So since people had diverted and deviated from the straight path, Allah, God, sent them another prophet. So that is why Noah, peace be upon him, was sent to this first idol-worshipping nation, and he struggled with them for over 950 years. And then we know the story of Noah, which, by the way, was my favorite story when I was growing up. The Noah and the ark and the animals and the righteous believers sailing in this storm, flood, whatever you want to call it. And so a new community starts. And then again, after Noah, after several centuries, again we see the same thing happening. Again, from being monotheistic, we go to being polytheistic, or worshipping false gods, worshipping human beings, worshipping idols, worshipping the nature. So we have many religions which worship the nature, which are all false religions, obviously, because we said that the only true religion is to worship the Creator. And whenever we worship the creation, then we are going astray. So with each community and with each deviation, Allah, out of His enormous mercy, He kept on sending new prophets and new messengers. And as the communities grew, and as the times changed and we became more and more complex in our living, in our culture, in our societies, Allah, He started revealing certain laws by which we can govern our society. So the central message had always been the same and has been the same: to worship one God and to follow the prophet of your time. So if you're born in the time of Abraham, then what is the way to your salvation? It is to believe and worship in one God and follow Abraham. If you're born in the time of Noah, you believe and worship in one God and you follow Noah. If you're born in the time of Moses, then you believe and worship in one God and you follow Moses. The same thing, if you're born in the time of Jesus, peace be upon Him, then you believe and worship in one God and you follow Jesus, peace be upon Him. And finally, if you were born after Muhammad, peace be upon him, the final messenger has come, then again, what are you required to do? To believe and worship in one God and to follow the final messenger, which is Muhammad, peace and blessings of God be upon him. So I hope you're understanding where we're going with this, is that Islam is not an alien religion. Islam is not a new religion. Islam is not the invention or the project which started with Muhammad, peace be upon him. Rather, it has always been the religion of God. It has always been the religion of the messengers. It has always been the way to God, to Allah. So, with times, as we said, new laws were sent, and these laws became more and more complex. And so we ended up with, for example, the law of Moses, peace be upon him, in the Torah, which was a very complex law. And then we have, finally, the Quran and the laws of the Sharia. And we're going to talk about Sharia because there's a lot of talk about Sharia. Now, what is this law? What is this inhumane law as put by the Western media, where we see people's hands being cut, where people are stoned to death? Now, is that what God's law is? No, we're going to talk about this in more detail. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We need to understand what the Sharia is and where it comes from, and what is the essence of this law, which has always been the law of God. If you compare the Old Testament laws with the laws of the Quran, you will find many similarities. So we're going to talk about it in a different session as well. But for now, in this session, what I want you to understand is that Islam is not an alien religion. It finds itself linked to the previous revelations because we believe that those revelations were true, and that those revelations said the exact same thing in their true form. What the Quran is saying is to worship one God. So after a prophet would come and establish the belief and worship of Allah, people would follow this message for some time and then slowly leave the path of Allah and introduce misguided paths and philosophies, worshipping stones and stars and considering some of the creation as having similar powers to Allah. And that is why we see, for example, in the case of Christianity, we have Jesus, peace be upon him, who came with the message of one God, who did not tell the people to worship him, who did not ask the people to take him as God, but what happened was that they actually did that after he left because of the misguided innovations in religion. That is why innovations in religion are so dangerous. One needs to be extremely careful regarding any kind of additions to the religion or deletions from the religion of God, even if you have a good intention. Because what we saw with the idol-worshipping nation of Noah, peace be upon him, was that they had good intentions. When they made those idols, they were making idols so that their children could learn from the history of these great scholars in their society. But what turned out happening was that the future generations took these or mistook these representations or idols as gods. And so we need to be extremely careful with the religion of God. We cannot make changes to the religion of God. We cannot add things to it. We cannot take things away from it, because that is exactly what Satan is looking for. And I've been using Satan in this, the term Satan in this particular episode, and we're going to once again talk about Satan in a separate episode. And it's an extremely interesting subject, and the Islamic perspective on it is extremely clear and is extremely exciting. So please wait for that episode, and I'm sure you will really enjoy it. So we have prophets after prophets after prophets coming. So we have Noah, and then we have Abraham, peace be upon him, who is considered to be the father of the monotheistic prophets. And he travels a lot. He's born in Iraq, and he struggles with his nation over there. They throw him out of the city, and then he travels westwards towards the Holy Land, Jerusalem. And this is where he establishes a family. He gets married to Sarah, and he gets married to Hagar, who is the slave woman of Sarah. So he has these two wives, and from these two wives he has two sons. The firstborn is Ishmael, his older son through Sarah. And from his other wife, through Hagar, he has Ishmael. And then from his other wife, Sarah, he gets Isaac. So he has these two sons. Abraham, peace be upon him, has two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. And Ishmael is settled in Mecca. So Abraham, peace be upon him, is ordered by God to leave part of his family and settle them near another sanctuary, another holy place, Mecca. And Ishmael grows in Mecca, and he is himself made a prophet. And the Arab nation then comes from Ishmael. So the Arabs trace their origins back to Ishmael. And then from his other son, Isaac, we have the start of the Jewish nation. So from him comes the prophet Jacob. And from Jacob, there is Joseph. And then later on, we have prophets such as Job. And we have prophets such as David and Solomon and John the Baptist and Jesus, peace be upon all of these great prophets. So from the line of Isaac, we have a series of prophets who come. And so from Abraham come these two great nations.